Hello everybody, welcome to today's battle report, which was a 4,500 point game of Demon Legions against Mike's Dwarven Holds. We've got the diagonal set up down here, and we've got the objectives to be captured here and just here. Going into this game, I was a little bit apprehensive. Dwarven Holds is a bad matchup for this demon list. Obviously, the Scourge of Wrath here is 1,100 points by himself and 200 for being my general. So I was very apprehensive going into this game about these two cannons here that both have engineers with them. So this setup here, there's a very big gap here. It's going to take me a good 2 turns to kind of get through that. So I'm very anxious about that. But we'll get into the game and we'll see how it went. Just before we do that, let's just go through the army list. So we've got 2 sets of copters here, Hold Guardians, then a bunch of Greybeards and clan warriors and basically core troops over here. Engineer cannon. There's a what's he called? I think he's like a slayer. He's got the whirling chains. I forget what he's called. And we've got an anvil here, and then not on the units not on the board at the moment are 3 units of miners. So that's Mike's army. On my side, I've got my slaughterers here, a unit of furies here, unit of crushers, another unit of furies, another unit of crushers, 2 blood cannons here and here, another unit of furies, and the Scourge of Wrath is behind the cannons. I made a mistake right at the start here because I thought that cannons ignored cover from terrain, but they don't. They just ignore cover full stop. And so I'd actually put my Scourge of Wrath behind the Blood Chariot because the Blood Chariot's large and obviously he's gigantic. So I was thinking that was soft cover. But I realised post-game that wasn't the case. Anyway, that's deployment. Let's get into Vanguards. Okay, so this is Vanguard. You can see minimal movement, really. Copters going around the side here, and the Copters and the Hold Guardians just moving up a little bit here to be in range. I'm initially happy that Mike's bringing his Copters this way. He looks like he's going to put at least one of these units into the Furies, which means he's not targeting other things. I'm perfectly happy for that, especially when my Furies are skirmishers in a set of ruins. So yeah, that's Vanguards anyway. Okay, so this is the end of Mike's turn 1, and I've immediately realised that I've made a mistake here in letting Mike deploy first, because it was my choice, and I let him deploy first, and he deployed his whole army, which I should have seen coming, because he wants to get as many rounds of shooting at me as he can. So that was a mistake. Anyway, this is Mike's movement. You can see minimal kind of shuffling with these units, but not really going anywhere. The miners can't come on yet. So, and all these blocks over here are just kind of staying where they are. So, a very stationary movement phase, as you would expect from the Dwarven Holds. That's the end of Mike's movement turn 1. Okay, so on to the end of Mike's turn 1 then. He got the Anvil of Reckoning, or the Rune of Reckoning, or whatever it's called, off on his Hold Guardians, which I was happy to let go through because I'm not planning to engage them this turn. What happened? What else happened? He got the Rune of Shattering off on the Furies over here, which caused a single wound, which doesn't really bother me at all. And I dispelled the Rune of Shattering. His Copters both went after the Slaughterers. He was initially going to go after the Furies here, but he's decided both to go after the Slaughterers, which has killed a total of 4 Slaughterers back here. Really lucky, really happy with this next bit. Both cannons missed my Scourge of Wrath, so that was great news. And that's the end of Mike's turn 1. Okay, so end of my movement then. Well, you can see what's happening here, really. The Slaughterers have failed a charge against the Copter here, which was a bit annoying. Took 1 wound from a stand and shoot, but I was a little bit disappointed with this, if I'm honest. I needed a 7 So better than even's chance, only just, mind you. Anyway, they failed that charge. So that's that. Other than that, everything else is just kind of moving up. I let the Reckoning go through earlier because I knew that I was going to drop the Furies here in front of the Hold Guardians, allowing this unit to advance without being flanked by them. So didn't mind that going off earlier, and that's why. Other than that, I've got my Scourge of Wrath hanging out behind the Crushers now because they're a bit faster than the Chariot. At this point, I'm still under the misimpression that they're providing cover for him. Otherwise, he'd be much further out than he is right now. Beyond that, I've got a unit of Furies just kind of advancing up here. I'm thinking that they might come in useful later, charging with one unit and prevent a flank charge with them. I'm keeping a unit of Furies back here at the moment because I'm thinking to deal with the Hold Guardians later on. That might kind of come in useful. Advancing with both chariots, but one faster than the other. I know that Mike's going to be bringing on some miners later, so I'm keeping one chariot back and close to this scoring marker here, so that I know that he's going to have to move onto the board, and then I'll be able to kind of move away and pivot for a charge that I can make and he can't, is kind of the idea, which is why this one's back here and one's kind of moving up forwards. But at the same time, both are facing this way because I want to get a couple of cannon shots off in turn one. Now, actually, this is also the photograph for the end of the turn because not a lot happened. Both cannons basically failed to hit their targets, and that was it. That was the whole of my turn one, so that was disappointing. So yeah, that's the end of my turn one. Okay, so this is Mike's movement turn two then. You can see that all 3 units of miners have arrived. I was expecting 2, I wasn't expecting 3 if I'm honest, but never mind. What else has happened? He's charged the Furies here with the Hold Guardians because he's got to get them out of the way, so that's the right decision. And he's brought both Copters out of the field of view of the Slaughterers just to attack them from behind and from the side. So really that charge I was trying to get off on them earlier was a use it or lose it. It was a bit of a one-time thing, I think. So yeah, that's Mike's movement. Obviously, he's got a unit of miners on the side here as well. But that's the end of Mike's movement turn 2. Okay, so end of Mike's turn 2 here then. And he's got the Rune of Reckoning off on the Hold Guardians, which I don't care about because the Furies are going to die anyway. Dispelled the Rune of Storms on the Scourge of Wrath, but he got through the Rune of Shattering on the Crushers over here. He did 4 wounds, and they went and promptly failed all of their 5+ armor saves and all of their 4+ ward saves. So I was really disappointed with that. I'd taken 4 wounds there when I was expecting to take 1, maybe 2. But there you go. A few Slaughterers died over here from attacks by the Copters. The Blood Chariot over here took 3 wounds. It managed to fail a bunch of armor saves and ward saves as well against these miners who were hitting it on, I think, 6s. Admittedly, they had 40 shots between them, but hitting it on 6s and wounding it on 5s. Again, I wasn't expecting to take 3 wounds with a 3+ armor save and a 5+ ward save, but what can you do? It's a dice game. Furies took a few wounds over here between the Engineer and these miners here, but one has survived and one is as effective as 5 at what they do. And got lucky again with the cannons. One failed to hit and the other failed to wound, so really happy with that actually. So yeah, a bit frustrated with things going with my Crushers and my Chariots, but really happy with the state of affairs with my Scourge of Wrath. So that's the end of Mike's turn 2. Okay, so this is my movement turn 2 then. And I have declared a charge with a unit of Crushers here. And needed a Swift Striding 8 against, I think it was this unit here. So I did expect to get that with your average Swift Striding roll of 9, but they failed their charge. So they this unit's kind of come just to the edge of the forest here. At least I didn't have to take any dangerous terrain tests, but that is a little bit frustrating. Other than that, I've moved the 2 chariots here, one to flank this unit and one to charge it in the front. I've gone the full kind of 7 inches here, and there's a good kind of like 3-4 inch gap here, so we're at sort of 10 or 11 inches here, which is possible, and in truth I should have probably moved the cannon a bit further this way in the previous turn to kind of anticipate that, but I didn't. So I'm hoping that he won't make this charge, but we'll just have to kind of see. But the plan is, yeah, charge one that way, charge the other that way. There. I've dropped the Furies here. The whole Guardians are facing this way, so they can't see them. So this is the ideal spot for the Furies, because they can be a nuisance later on, is the plan, while the Chariots are sorting out these units, is kind of what I'm thinking. And I've turned the Slaughterers around, because what I'm thinking is that the Hold Guardians really have only got 2 choices, which is kind of to wheel around this way, or to reform and face a charge from the Slaughterers. I am going to have to run through the ruins. I'm not overly bothered about that. I'm going to lose kind of like 1 or 2, but the Slaughterers are a strength 5, weapon skill 5, so I'm expecting them to do a few wounds on the Hold Guardians. The Hold Guardians' multiple attacks won't help them against Slaughterers, so yeah, I'm hoping to kind of get something out of that combat, really. Other than that, the other unit of Crushers here has moved up just to the edge of the forest, so preparing for a charge in the following turn there. And I brought the Scourge of Wrath into position here. He's got a brave 1 more round of shooting, and then he should be into all of these units and generally causing mayhem. So I've got my 3 kind of big players here closing in on this block. This is also the photo from the end of my turn as well, because I fired both cannons into these units here, and both missed again, so they haven't got a single hit yet. But then neither of Mike's cannons, so you know, you win some, you lose some. That is the end of my turn 2. Okay, so this is actually a photograph from the end of Mike's turn, because we seem to have lost the movement photograph. I'm sure I took it, but anyway, can't find it. So not a lot actually happened in the movement phase. The copters, kind of bombers, I think they are actually, kind of flew over here and prepared to zap the Furies, and between their sweeping attack and their shots, they managed to take out the Furies, which is absolutely fine, because I would rather they have taken out the Furies and left the Slaughterers alone, so more Slaughterers to go into this combat and to survive the ruins. So that was that. And Mike's only other movement was to charge the Blood Chariot on an 11, as it turned out. So he needed to roll an 8 on 2 dice, so 36% chance, but he made it. So he got into combat there. The Chariot actually didn't do badly. It took out 4 of the miners, but it only had 1 wound, and he did just cause the 1 wound. So yeah, that was a bit frustrating, really. But there you go. That was that. Elsewhere in this turn, I got Rune of Reckoning on the Hold Guardians. I didn't want that to go through this time, because I know that my Slaughterers are going to go into combat with these guys, but I just can't risk in getting the Rune of Storms and the Rune of Shattering on the Scourge of Wrath. So I've got to watch out for that. So I had to let that go through, which it did. I managed to dispel the Rune of Shattering on the Scourge of Wrath. So yeah, that was that for the magic phase, actually. Sorry. I managed to dispel the Storms. He got Shattering off again on my Crushers, which again did 3 or 4 wounds, and again my Crushers failed all of their 5+ armor saves and all of their 4+ ward saves, so they're having a really bad day. Copters killed off the Furies, as we've already seen. These miners here took out this single Fury, which, you know, absolutely fine, really. The cannon here actually misfired, so that was great. And this cannon actually hit and wounded, but I managed to save it on my 5+ ward save, so that was a bit lucky. But the engineers did some damage to the Scourge of Wrath with their ranged weapons, so he's taken a couple of wounds. He's down to 4, but I'm looking forward to him getting into combat now. So that's that, really. That's the end of Mike's turn 3. Okay, so on to my turn 3 here then, and we seem to have lost the movement photo for my turn 3, which is really annoying. Because there was quite a lot of movement actually going on in my turn 3. Started with the Scourge of Wrath over here. Now, I decided to charge directly at the cannon. I needed a 5 on the two best of 3 dice, and I rolled a 4 on the 2 best of 3 dice. Something like a 97% chance of success. So I was absolutely furious about that. What an absolute tool that guy is. The Slaughterers both got into combat. The Crushers, rather, both got into combat. And also both really flopped. They went in and both units of Dwarves held. Even though they were being hit on, I think, 3s or 4s and being wounded on 2s and 3s. They got a 5+ ward because they're being charged at, but yeah, both held. Could not believe it. And then over here, I managed to get a total of 2 wounds, even though I was going in at weapon skill 5, strength 5. Meanwhile, the Hold Guardians hit back with 13 attacks. And they were hitting on 4s, and they got 12 out of 13 attacks through. Then they were wounding on, 2s. They got all 12 wounding. Then I was saving my ward saves on 5+, saved none. And then all of their stomps, which were wounding on, I think, 3s, they all wounded as well. And I made 1 ward save from that. So that was absolutely atrocious. So yeah, my Slaughterers have taken a real kind of pounding there, which is really frustrating because there's nothing tactically that terrible about it. I mean, it wasn't great going through ruins and rerolls. I was going to take more of a hit than I expected, but really the depressing bit was actually not what I took, but what I failed to dish out. From the dice, but there you go. What can you do? So other than that, we had a charge down at the bottom of the screen, which my chariot made, and those dwarves decided to flee from that, and the chariot failed to catch them. So that's kind of why they're there like that. That is the end of my turn 3. Okay, so Mike's movement turn here then. You can see he's brought his copters down here, and he's rallied his miners here, and he's bringing his other miners this way, so there's a bit of a 3-way thing going on with this chariot here. That's now in trouble. He's brought his other copter over here. He's double charged this unit of Crushers. In spite of how badly they did last turn, I'm not overly concerned about that because these are just Dwarven infantry, although the way some of my damage output is going, and maybe I should be, I don't know. And he's run his engineer and his general out of the pursuit path here, which I think is quite a good move. So that is the end of Mike's movement phase. Let's get on to what happened in this turn. Okay, so end of Mike's turn 4 here then. He's actually failed to dispel the Rune of Reckoning. And then I've managed to dispel both the Rune of Shattering and the Rune of Storms. So that was pretty good. He forgot to move his miners in the movement phase, so that's why the miners have suddenly moved here, because we let that kind of go through. The Scourge of Wrath, having failed his 5-inch charge, what an absolute clown, now died to the cannons, so he hasn't got in at all, so that was really depressing. and the Hold Guardians here have finished off the Slaughterers, who that was to be expected at this point. It was what happened earlier that kind of wasn't really. A single wound down here from the combined shooting of these two units, actually. So that Chariot's actually not in such a bad position at the moment. The Crushers have finally kind of turned up. They pursued here. This one I was well impressed with, fending off all three units. It was absolutely mental over here. One fled off the board that way, the other fled this way, and the third was caught as I chased into the unit behind. So yeah, they did really well. They finally turned up. So that's the end of Mike's turn. What are we on? End of Mike's turn 3. Okay, so on to my turn 4 then. And you can see that the cannon has made it into combat here with these miners. Both my Crushers are already had already moved in at the end of the movement phase because they both kind of overran or pursued or whatever over here. So they'd already kind of done their movement. So that was it. I've only got 3 units left on the board. So that's the end of my movement. Okay, so it was finally turn 4 when things kind of started happening in the Demon's way, really. The Crushers managed to finish off the Seeker. He did manage to down one of them, but they overran into the Anvil. These Crushers had previously pursued into the Engineer, and they finished off him and have gone into the Cannon. And the Chariot over here has taken out the Miners. So yeah, won a few combats, which was nice. Scored a few points in that round, finally. So that was the end of my turn 4. Okay, so this is a photo from the end of Mike's turn 5. Unfortunately, we've lost the movement photo again. I'm really frustrated by that. I don't know where that's gone. But if I just talk you through kind of what happens over the Miners and the bombers here both moved into position to shoot the Chariots. The Miners didn't actually do any wounds, but the bombers did 5 wounds, which is incredible, really, when you think they're hitting on 3s or 4s, wounding on 4s, and the Chariot's got a 5-up armor save against them and a 5-up ward save. To do 5 wounds off 8 shots was just staggering. So that was the end of the Chariot. The Crushers had overran into the Anvil, and they smashed through the Anvil, and they'd previously reformed, but then the Copters had dropped themselves directly in the path of the Crushers, which I don't understand that really, because that's just kind of suicide really. And the Crushers, having overran previously, have now run into the cannon over here. So that's the. I think actually no, they went into the Anvil. They beat the Anvil and reformed. Okay, so this is Mike's turn 5 then, and the bombers. Oh God, these bombers! 8 shots, hitting on 3s or 4s, wounding on 4s, 5-up armor, 5-up ward. I'm thinking 1 wound, maybe 2. No, 5. So that was the end of the Chariot. And over in this corner here, the Anvil was destroyed, and the Crushers here overran, which created a new charge, so they went into the cannon. And then on this side here, the cannon died, and they reformed, following Mike's dropping the unit Copters here. So those Copters are suddenly in a world of trouble because they're standing in between my scoring unit and the secondary objective, and they will absolutely demolish them. Well, you never know the way things are going. But yeah, that's the end of Mike's turn 5. Okay, so this is my movement turn 5 then. Just one thing to happen really, which is the Crushers charge into the Copters. These Crushers had just overrun into the cannon, so they were already committed. So that's the end of my movement turn 5. Okay, so end of my turn 5 here then. You can see the Copters have been absolutely smashed. The Crushers have reformed. So that they can't be flank charged, just in case Mike decides to try a desperate charge over here. And this Crusher here is within distance to secure the secondary objective there. And then this unit of Crushers here has reformed at the end of turn 5 to make a final charge at this unit, or maybe this unit, one or the other, in turn 6. So that's the end of my turn 5. Okay, so Mike's movement 6 then, you can see his scoring units are moving in here on the secondary objective down here. And he's actually moved his miners closer to my Crushers. I think this is supposed to be bait to try and pull me away from the secondary objective. There's no way I'm going to go for that. But he did manage to cause a wound on this unit from his shooting. So that was the end of Mike's movement turn 6 and the end of Mike's turn 6 really, because there's no combat, so didn't bother with a photo for the end of the turn. Okay, so my movement 6 here then, and I've sidestepped with these Crushers just to bring them well within range there, so there's no doubt there. And I've made a charge against the 4 remaining Greybeards over here. Don't want to charge this unit. The way this game's going, they might not actually win and that unit might not break. And there's only 2 of them, so going after this smaller unit and securing those points is just as viable as, well, more viable, just as valuable but more viable than going after the bigger units. So the Crushers go in for one last combat in turn 6. Okay, so end of turn 6 then, and you can see that the Crushers have finished off the Greybeards, and that would be the end of the game, which would finish 12-8 in Mike's favour. So well done to Mike. I felt that Mike's army list was a really good one. From the start, it was always going to be difficult. Funnily enough, it wasn't actually until turn 3 that the Dwarf Cannons turned up, although that was frustrating because all my Scourge of Wrath needed to do was make a 5 to actually get into combat, which would have changed the game entirely. I was frustrated in this game. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. There's that Scourge of Wrath charge. There were the number of times that my Crushers and my Cannons took damage without making any armour or ward saves. It was a very frustrating game, but it was always going to be a difficult game right from the start with that massive gap across the middle and the whole gun line kind of setup. So yeah, there you go. That was the end of the game. It was a good game. And we'll be back next week for more. So thanks for watching, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you next time.